Bez Hashem Yisboch, we begin Perek Sheni, the second chapter in the Rambam Hilchos Berachos, the laws of blessings, the Save Have a book of love, which now we begin the discussion regarding grain products, which in this Perek we discuss specifically regarding Birchas Hamazon, which is the biblical blessing after one has eaten a grain meal. As Rambam begins the halacha regarding the primary blessing, say the Birchas Hamazon kachi, the order of the blessing of food, of a bread meal, is as follows. Rishayna, the first blessing is Birchas Hazan, the blessing of the sustenance. Shnia, the second blessing is Birchas Haaretz, the blessing on the land of Israel that was given to us. Shlisha, the third blessing is Bnei Yerushalayim, that he built Jerusalem. And Ravis, the fourth bracha is Ateva Meitiv, that he's good and that he does good. As Rambam explains, Baruch Rishon, the first blessing, Moshe ben Tikna. Our teacher Moshe, he instituted when the mun fell down from Shemayim for them, which in times of Moshe Benu, which is the zon, that he's on the cycle that he feeds everyone. Shni, the second blessing, Tikkun Yeshua, was instituted by Yeshua ben Nun when they entered into Eretz Yisrael, which that's the blessing on the land of Eretz Yisrael. Shlisha, the third blessing, is Tikkun David Shlomo b'Benai. David and the son Shlomo instituted, where David instituted Al Yisrael and Mechav Al Yisrael Redecha, which was in the days of David, and Shlomo instituted Al Abayis HaGav HaKodesh because he's the one that built the Beis HaMikdash. Now, Ravi is the fourth blessing, Chachmei Mishneh Tiknu, the sages of the Mishnah, they instituted on the day that those who were executed in Beitar were merited to be buried after a long period of time. He's good because the dead didn't putrefy, and he does good, which they were given over to be buried. Halacha beis. If you have workers that were doing work by the employer, by the homeowner, and they were eating their bread meal, they don't make a bracha mametzi before they eat, because it's not biblical. And we don't want to waste time for things that are not biblically obligated, because they're obligated to the employer. And they make a bracha after their meal, which that's already biblical, already Birchas Hamazon, but they only make shtei brachas b'lvad, only two blessings. They're not going to make the fourth bracha because it's rabbinic, and they can make the first three, but it's going to be in two blessings. And the reason is because we don't want to stop the work that they have to do for their employer. So bracha Rishon, the first blessing is Kittikun, the way it's instituted, the bracha Bazan Sakol. Shni, the second blessing, you start with Noidel, the blessing of the land, but and you include in it the third blessing of building Yerushalayim, because the number of blessings on Birchas Hamazon is not biblical, so therefore you could include and amalgamate the third into the second. But and you conclude with the blessing of Allah Aretz and you on the land of Eretz Yisrael, which is the second blessing. Now, but if let's say the work they were doing was only for the wages of the food they were going to eat, that's the wages. Or even if not, but the employee was reclining eating with them, then they make the four blessings as it was instituted, like all other people. The blessing on the land of Eretz Yisrael, the second bracha and benching. You have to say thanksgivings in the beginning and then the end. You start and you end. On the moedim, we thank you, etc. And you end the blessing on the land and on the food. Whoever does not say the desirable, the good and expansive land, in the second bracha benching of the blessing of the land, is not filled his obligation, because the land of Israel is praised with these terminologies. You also have to mention the covenant of the Milah and of the Torah, because it's in the merit of both of them that Eretz Yisrael was given. And you preface the covenant before that of Torah, because this covenant referring to in the blessing of the land of Israel, he bris milah is referring to the covenant of the circumcision. Where the Torah mentions the milah 13 times, so there's 13 covenants. Whereas Torah is second because kula, the whole Torah, there's only 3 covenants. Rambam says in Devarim, Ela Divri Habris, Mavad Habris Ashakaras Itam B'Cher B'Goyma, and Atam Tabla Avracho B'Bris B'Goyma. So he says mentioned only 3 times. Therefore, the bris milah comes first. Halacha Daled, bracha Shlishis, the third bracha in Birchas Hamazon. Pasech, but you open up by saying Yerachem Hashem Lekeinu. Have mercy, Hashem our God, Aleinu, Val Yisrael Amecha, on us and on your people, the Jews, Val Yerushalayim Redecha, and on Yerushalayim, your city, Val Tzion, Mishkan Kevedecha, on Tzion, your holy abode, your honorable dwelling. Or you could start off Nachmeinu Hashem Lekeinu, Yerushalayim Redecha. Console Hashem our God, us in Yerushalayim, your city, and you end the bracha Boin Yerushalayim, that He builds Yerushalayim. Or you could end Menachem Am Yisrael Bevin Yerushalayim, that he consoles his people, the Jews, with the building of Yerushalayim, because the building of Yerushalayim is the consolation of the Jewish people. Well, the figure Nikras Bracha Zun Nachama, that's why this blessing, the third one, is called Nachama, consolation. Now, Malchus based David, whoever does not mention the Davidic dynasty in this blessing, is not fulfilled his obligation. Because it's the idea of the blessing, because you don't have a complete consolation of the building of Yerushalayim, Malchus based David, only with the return of the Davidic dynasty. Regarding additions to the benching at different times in the year. So b'Shabbasis, b'Yom Tovim, and the holidays, Maschil b'Nechama, Masayim b'Nechama, you'll start with consolation and you'll end with consolation, meaning you're not going to change it because it's Shabbos, which oftentimes the end of a blessing you will mention Shabbos, like in Shemoneh Esrei. No, you'll end and start as you do it in a weekday. And you'll say, you talk about the sanctity of the day in middle of that third bracha of benching. Ketzad Maschil, how do you start off? As regular, Nachameinu Shemalekeinu b'Tzion console us, Hashem our God, with Tzion your city. Or Rachem Hashem Alekeinu al Yisrael Mecha B'al Yerushalayim Mecha. Have mercy, Hashem our God, on your Jewish people and on Yerushalayim your city. And he concludes, like we said, Benachem Am Yisrael B'Ben Yerushalayim. He consoles his people, the Jews, with the building of Yerushalayim, or Ben Yerushalayim, or that he builds Yerushalayim. Now he says in the middle. Depends. So, B'Shabbos on Shabbos we say, our God, the God of our fathers, Ritzei, may be willing, and strengthen us and motivate us in your mitzvahs, and in the midst of the seventh day, the great and holy, great and holy one. Because this day is great and holy in front of you. We should rest in it, and we should be relaxed in it. With love, like the commandment of your will, in your willingness, give us this resting, Hashem our God. And it shouldn't be on a tzara, difficult, and evil, and moaning, and groaning, on the day of our comfort, the day of our resting. Now regarding a Yom Tiv, say a different nusach, that of Ya'ala v'Yavai, which is a different nusach of celebrating the Yom Tiv. So too you say Yal B'Yaveh on the Rish Chodesh, the beginning of the month, and on the intermediate days of the Yom Tiv, add on in the middle of the third bracha, like we said, Yal B'Yaveh. Halacha Vav, B'Chanukah B'Purim, which are two rabbinic holidays, add on in the middle of the second bracha of Berachos Haaretz, Al Hanisim, on the miracles. Just like by Moedim, by Shemoneh Esrei, you add on the Al Hanisim by the bracha of Thanksgiving, so too the second bracha of Neidulcha is Thanksgiving, that's where you add on Al Hanisim to give thanks for the miracles. Now, if it's not just Shabbos, it's Shabbos that's Yom Tov, or Shabbos Rish Chodesh, so Masker, you mentioned Ritzei V'Chatzei Netchili. First talk about Shabbos, which is Ritzei, and then you mention Yal B'Yaveh, that talking about Rish Chodesh or Yom Tov. And Mechein Rish Chodesh Tevis Chalis B'Shabbos. If it's Rish Chodesh Tevis that's on the Shabbos, Masker, you mentioned three things. Al Hanisim, because the middle of Chanukah B'Berachos Haaretz, and the second bracha of benching. Ritzei V'Chatzei regarding Shabbos, and then Yal B'Yaveh. Those two are Benachama in the third bracha of consolation of B'nai Yerushalayim. Halacha Zayin. Now bracha Rabbi is the fourth bracha. Tzarich lahaskir ba sholosh malchus. You have to mention the kingdom three times. Now, so that's the fourth bracha. Now, when the guest is making birchas hamazon by a homeowner, by a host, he adds on a blessing for the homeowner. How does he say? So when he finishes the fourth bracha, he says, maybe the will that the homeowner not be embarrassed in this world, and he not be shamed in the world to come, etc., where there's a whole text. And he has permission, the volition, to add on to this blessing of the host, and to be lengthy regarding its blessing. When you make a blessing in the house of a mourner, when you make birchas hamazon, so you say in the fourth blessing, you add on to the text. You say, HaMelech HaChai, the living king, HaTov HaMeit, who is good and does good, Kel Emes, the true God, Dayan Emes, the true judge, Shofet B'Tzedek, who judges with righteousness, Shal B'Olam, who dominates in this world, L'Asber Ketzan, to do as his will is, Shanachnu Amay V'Avodav, that we are his people and his servants, Uvakoyel Anachnu Chayavim Lahoidis Loi, Ulevarcha, and regarding everything we have an obligation to give thanks to him and to bless him. And he also beseeches mercy for the mourner, to console him according to what he wants. And the ends of which are all the merciful one, which are all the supplications we say after the fourth blessing in Birchas Hamazon. Halacha test regarding the Sheva Brachas, which are also added on to the benching, Beveis Chasanim, as the Rambam says. We call it the Sheva Brachas, the Shebes Mishneh, when the Chasan who's marrying his Kala and he's taken her to the Chuppah, so Mevorchen Birchas Chasanim. So by the Chasna, they make a bracha of the Chasna, of the wedding, Acha Arba Brachas Elu, after these 4 blessings of Birchas Hamazon, every meal that they eat over there in the Beis Chasanim, by the Chasna, so they're going to add on, they're going to make brachas of Sheva Brachas. Now, these blessings are not made loya b'adam aloiketanim, not servants, not minders. Now, ad kama. So the question is, until how many days mevarchim brachazu do you make these blessings? So, if it's a widow where they married a widow, you only make it on the first day, the day that they got married. By every meal that they make on that day, they say these Sheva Brachas, these 7 blessings. Now, if it was an unmarried man who married a widow, or a widower that married a virgin, then you make it all the 7 days of the festivities of the that comes after the wedding. This blessing that you add on by the chasna, it's actually by a chasna, by the chuppah, by the marriage itself, nothing to do with the benching. By the chasna, there are 7 blessings that they make. The last of those blessings is the one that's added on after benching, depending either for 1 day or 7 days, like we said in the previous halacha. Now, remember when we say that you only make 1 blessing that you make by the Sheva Brachas, which we call it the Sheva Brachas, but Sheva Mishneh, you only make 1 blessing. That's only those who are eating by these meals in these 7 days. Those who already were there by the chuppah and they heard the blessings already once. But if others are eating what we call pan chadash, new people, they did not hear the brachas that were done by the chasna when the chasna happened. Then you would make the blessing because of those new people after the Berachas Hamazon, Sheva Brachas, 7 blessings, in the way you bless the Chas and Kala at the time of the Chasna, but when they are Shia Sara, as long as there's 10 people, and the grooms themselves are part of the quorum of 10. Which some don't have this, some do have this text for this halacha. And these are the 7 blessings that are by Chasna. We add on, if there's Pan Chadash, new people, for the Sheva Mishneh. So the first is Baruch Atah Hashem Lekin Melchayim, blessed are you Hashem, our God, King of the world, Shakol Baruch Lechvoided, that everything He created for His honor. The second one is Baruch Atah Hashem Lekin Melchayim, blessed are you Hashem, our God, King of the world, Yitzar Adam, who formed man. Third one is Baruch Atah Hashem Lekin Melchayim, Asher Yotzes Adam Mitzalma, who formed man in His image, B'Tselem Demus Tavnisai, in His image reflecting His form. And he prepared, He made from the man himself, which He took a tzela, a part of him, and He made a binyan ad, an everlasting structure, which the woman was taking, which is to procreate and have children that are an everlasting structure. Baruch Atah Hashem, Yitzhak Adam, blessed Hashem, who formed man. Next blessing is Sois Tasis, surely rejoice v'sagil, and be glad, Akara, the barren one, which refers to Yerushalayim, that is barren in its destruction. Bekibet benel l'seich v'simcha, when you're going to gather together her sons inside of it with joy, because we want to recall Yerushalayim in our time of joy. Baruch Atah Hashem, blessed Hashem, b'sameach tzim b'beneho, who rejoices Zion with her children. Next blessing is Sameach Tsamach Reim V'Ahuvim. Be surely happy, friends and beloved ones. Like your Creator made you rejoice in the Garden of Eden from earlier in history, in the beginning of time. Baruch Atah Hashem, b'sameach chas v'kala, blessed Hashem, who makes the groom and the bride happy. The next blessing is Baruch Atah Hashem Lekin Melchayim Asher bara sasam v'simcha, that created joy and happiness, chasen v'kala, the groom and the bride, gila, gladness, verina and song, ditza, cheer, v'chedva, and delight, ava, love, achva, brotherhood or harmony, shalom, peace, verdeus, and friendship, meheira, speedily Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem our God, should be Yishama, should be heard Ba'ar Yehuda, in the cities of Judea, V'chutz Yerushalayim, in the outskirts of Yerushalayim, Kal Sasim, Kal Simcha, the sound of rejoicing and the sound of happiness, Kal Chasim, Kal Kala, the voice of the groom, the voice of the bride, Kal, the voice Mitzalis Chasan Mechupasim, the shouting of the grooms from their chuppah, from their wedding canopy, Uno Adam and Mishneh Torah, and the youth from the festivities of their singing. Baruch Atah Hashem, bless you Hashem, B'samei Chasan Im Hakala, who makes the bride happy with the bride. Halacha Beis continues regarding what happens if someone forgets parts of benching, the additions that we spoke about. Shachach, if someone forgot, he did not recall on Shabbos or Yom Tov, Kedushas Yom, talking about the sanctity of that day, which we mentioned, Halacha Hey, Ritzei, Yalbi. So, if he recalls, even though he finished already Ben Yerushalayim, but if he recalls before he started the fourth bracha, but Tavim, so then right there you could insert a bracha. But Shabbos, on Shabbos he says, Baruch Hashem, Asher Nasa Menuchel Am Yisrael, bless Hashem who gave the resting to his people, the Jews, Lo'is, L'Bris Kodesh, for a sign and for a holy covenant. Baruch Atah Hashem Mekadosh Shabbos, bless Hashem who sanctified the Shabbos. Yom Tov and Yom Tov he says, Baruch Hashem Nasa Yom Tov L'Am Yisrael, blesses he gives the good days to his people, the Jews, L'Sos and L'Simcha, for rejoicing and for happiness. Baruch Atah Hashem Mekadosh Shabbos Manim, who sanctifies the Jews and the designated times. And then the Maskal B'Bracha Revis, and then he starts the fourth blessing and he finishes it. Now, but if he only recalls after he already started the fourth blessing, then Pesach has to stop. Go back to the beginning, which is the first bracha of Berachos Hamazon, the bracha Bazan Sakel. Halacha Yud Gimel. But Rosh Chodashim on Rosh Chodesh, if Shachach B'Lo Yal B'Yavai, if there he forgot and he didn't say Yal B'Yavai, so if he recalls before he starts the fourth blessing, I could say also a same type of a bracha. Baruch Hashem Nasan Rosh Chodashim, blessed he who gives the beginning of the months, La'ama Yisrael is current for his people, the Jews, as a recollection, as a recalling. Now, he does not, however, make a chasim, make an ending with a baruch, because since Rosh Chodesh is permitted to do malacha, it's not so significant to have a chasima like Yom Tov when you say that you miss Yal B'Yalbi. And then after you finish a Maskal B'Bracha Revis, you start the fourth blessing and you finish it. But if you recall only after you started the fourth blessing, you finish it, you don't go back because the missing of the Yalav Yalva, because eating Rosh Chodesh is optional. If he wants to not eat bread, he was able to, and therefore it's not significant enough, like by a Yom Tov, which you have to eat, to have to go and say over again. Regarding intermediate days, also, if you forgot Yalav Yalva, you would not have to say over Berachos Hamazon. If you forget, you don't mention the idea, but the Ala Nisim, in the second bracha of Berachos Hamazon, they're also in the Chayt, you wouldn't have to say it because Chanukah and Purim are only rabbinic Yom Tovim in their own right. Halacha Yadalad Misha Achol. If someone ate, B'Shachach B'Lei Berach, he forgot, he didn't yet say Berachos Hamazon, didn't bench yet. So Im Niska Koyim Chase Akal HaMachal Shabemeyav, if he recalls before the food already got digested in his stomach, where as long as he's not yet hungry from having eaten before, it's a sign it's not yet fully digested. So Chayz Mevarach, he could go back and he could still say Berachos Hamazon. But if the food in his stomach already got digested, he's already hungry again, then he cannot go back and say Berachos Hamazon, it's already too late. Let's say it's eluding him. He doesn't know if he made Berachos Hamazon or not. He would have to go back and say Berachos Hamazon because it's biblical, and when you have a subject deraisa, biblical doubt, we go stringently, you would have to bench. But who, as long as, like we said, as long as the food was not yet digested, only then would you, out of doubt, go ahead and bench for having forgotten from previous.